Let's be honest, nobody does music festivals quite like the British. For decades, millions of people have left their everyday lives behind to spend a weekend covered in mud, eating questionable burgers, and watching genuine music legends make history on stage. From jazz gatherings organized by aristocrats in the 1950s, to the huge, free-spirited hippie festivals and the wild rock revolutions of the 1990s. It's a brilliantly chaotic experience, and one that's unmistakably British. So, grab your wellies and a waterproof jacket. We're about to relive the history and memories of Britain's most legendary music festivals, from the 1950s to the year 2000. Trust me, things are about to get seriously wild. Before rock and roll took over, British festivals were a rather classy affair. Welcome to the Bolio Jazz Festival, held from 1956 to 1961. Lord Montague, a wealthy aristocrat, opened the gates of his vast country estate for a weekend of jazz. And the ticket price? An absolute bargain. Less than £1 for the entire weekend. The festival's official slogan was, "A combination of blue blood and blues." The lineup featured some of Britain's finest jazz legends, including Johnny Dankworth and Humphrey Lyttelton. At first, it was just a few hundred well-behaved jazz fans sipping tea. But before long, thousands of rebellious bohemians began turning up, camping in the woods and drinking far too much cider. The result? Complete chaos. A fierce rivalry broke out between fans of traditional jazz and the modern jazz crowd. During a live BBC broadcast, a massive brawl erupted. Drunken youngsters trashed parts of the site and even climbed the lighting towers. The BBC crew fled in panic and the live broadcast was cut off. That infamous Battle of Bolio is widely regarded as the first major festival riot in British history. Everything changed in the 1960s. Britain's festival scene exploded like never before. The days of elegant country estates were over, and the legendary Isle of Wight Festival was born in 1968. Almost overnight, this small island became the beating heart of Britain's counterculture. Back then, tickets were remarkably cheap, costing around £2 for the whole weekend. Tens of thousands of young people packed their bags, boarded the ferries, and headed south for a huge celebration of peace, love, and rock and roll. The lineups were absolutely incredible. Big names like The Who and Jefferson Airplane delivered unforgettable performances, but the real highlight came in 1969. The organizers pulled off what seemed impossible by booking Bob Dylan. It was his first major UK festival appearance since his serious motorcycle accident, and the anticipation couldn't have been higher. But here's the best part. The crowd wasn't made up of ordinary hippies alone. 3 members of the Beatles, John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, turned up simply as festival goers. They were spotted relaxing in the VIP area, just to watch Dylan perform. Imagine being an ordinary bloke in the crowd, turning around and suddenly finding the Fab Three standing right beside you. Absolutely bonkers. We simply can't talk about Britain's festival scene without mentioning London's most famous green space, Hyde Park. Between 1968 and 1971, the park hosted a series of huge free concerts right in the heart of the capital, attracting some of the biggest names in rock. The defining moment came on the 5th of July, 1969. The Rolling Stones performed a historic free concert for more than 250,000 people. But behind the scenes, emotions were running high. Just 2 days earlier, the band's founding member, Brian Jones, had tragically died. Rather than cancelling the show, the band turned it into a moving public tribute. Mick Jagger stepped onto the stage dressed in white, read a poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley, and thousands of white butterflies were released into the summer sky. It was emotional. It was unforgettable. And it helped cement Hyde Park as one of Britain's most iconic rock venues. As the 1970s arrived, Britain's festival scene finally found its spiritual home. Welcome to 1970, the very year a humble dairy farmer named Michael Eavis changed music history forever. After attending an open-air Led Zeppelin concert, he came up with a bold idea. Why not put on a festival of his own at his family's farm in Somerset? And that's exactly how the legendary Glastonbury Festival was born. Back then, it was known as the Pilton Pop Folk and Blues Festival, and it was tiny compared with the enormous event we know today. Only around 1,500 people turned up for that very first edition. The ticket price? An absolute bargain, just £1. And here's the best bit. Every festival goer received a free pint of fresh milk, straight from the farm's own cows. The glam rock band T-Rex ended up headlining the festival, and Michael Eavis reportedly paid them using money he'd earned from selling milk after the original headlining act pulled out. Glastonbury quickly became Britain's ultimate hippie paradise, kicking off a gloriously muddy tradition that still defines British festival culture to this day. By the 1980s, Britain's festival scene had split into two completely different worlds. On one side was the legendary Stonehenge Free Festival, a wild, completely free gathering of hippies, New Age travelers, druids, and space rock bands like Hawkwind, all coming together beside the ancient stones. It was chaotic, unconventional, and unlike anything else in Britain. But everything changed during the summer solstice of 1985. Determined to bring the festival to an end, the authorities launched what became known as the Battle of the Beanfield. More than 1,000 police officers ambushed a convoy of peaceful festival goers on their way to Stonehenge. The confrontation ended with hundreds of violent arrests, smashed vehicles, and shocking scenes that made headlines across Britain. Overnight, the era of unlicensed free festivals came to an end. Meanwhile, Reading Festival had become the undisputed home of rock and heavy metal. If Stonehenge stood for peace and freedom, Reading was loud, commercial, and relentless. It was a ticketed festival where bands like Iron Maiden and Meat Loaf played to massive crowds fueled by beer and adrenaline. Then there was Reading's famous tradition. If a band wasn't good enough for the crowd, they didn't just boo, they hurled thousands of beer cans and plastic bottles at the stage. Surviving a Reading crowd became a badge of honor for any band brave enough to play there. Now, let's pause the timeline for a moment, because the 1980s gave birth to the ultimate home of heavy music, Monsters of Rock. Launched in 1980 at Donington Park, this one-day festival quickly became a pilgrimage for leather-clad rock fans. It wasn't a weekend camping trip. It was a relentless, one-stage marathon of pure heavy metal. Tickets for the very first festival cost just £5, giving 40,000 fans the chance to see legends like Rainbow and Judas Priest. Over the years, the lineups only got bigger, welcoming giants such as AC, DC, Iron Maiden, and Metallica. Donington's crowd became legendary too. If a band failed to win them over, thousands of plastic bottles, sometimes filled with urine, would come flying towards the stage. And then there were the fireworks. During the very first festival, Rainbow's drummer, Cozy Powell, packed so many explosives around his drum kit that the final blast reportedly shattered windows in nearby villages. It was loud, outrageous, and pure rock and roll. The 1990s were, without a doubt, the golden age of British music. Festivals became huge commercial events, packed with unforgettable moments that defined an entire generation. First, we have to talk about Reading in 1992 and Nirvana. Rumors were everywhere that the band were about to split because of Kurt Cobain's health. So, to mock the press, Kurt wheeled himself onto the stage wearing a hospital gown and a wig. He stood up, sang a single line, then dramatically collapsed to the floor.
Some say love.
Before launching into one of the most legendary rock performances of all time, pure genius. Then came Britpop, and it completely took over Britain. Glastonbury in 1995 became the stage for the famous Oasis and Blur rivalry, but the real peak came the following year. Oasis played 2 historic nights at Knebworth Park, in front of more than 250,000 fans. It wasn't just a concert, it was a cultural phenomenon. More than 4 million people applied for tickets, over 4% of the entire British population at the time. As Liam Gallagher walked onto the stage, he looked out at the crowd and declared, "This is history, right here, right now." It was the ultimate celebration of British indie rock before the internet changed everything. What a decade! By the 2000s, Britain's festivals had become bigger than ever. In 2003, Download Festival took over Donington Park, carrying on the legendary legacy of Monsters of Rock. Metal giants like Metallica, Iron Maiden, and Slipknot turned it into Britain's ultimate home of heavy music. Further north, Scotland had its own festival icon, Tea in the Park. Famous for its passionate crowds, the atmosphere was unlike anywhere else. In 2004, the darkness had to stop their performance after a drunken fan somehow climbed the main stage rigging just to wave at the crowd. Festivals had become huge business, but the wonderfully chaotic British spirit was still alive and kicking. From posh jazz estates in the 50s to muddy rock fields, British festivals have always been about one thing: pure, unfiltered freedom. Through the rain, the riots, and the legendary tunes, we built a culture that changed the world forever. Thanks for watching, lads. See you down the front.